Hello again. Last time you saw me build the front crossbeam, and today we are going to add a mast foot and a stepping device to this beam. As I already have made a rotating mast, I will make a matching mast foot to that. The mast is difficult to raise without a stepping device, so I will make a hinge that will make it easier to raise the mast. In last week's episode I prepared for the mast foot with putting a massive support in place and marking where the hole was located, so that I could find it after the top cover was set in place, and drilling a hole into the crossbeam. Now I can continue with the hole, clean up the edge, check that the bolt fits. The mast has a 5.5 cm deep recess, where the pin that the mast rotates around can fit. So I will place the pin at this height. To raise the mast easier, I will make a hinge. So I cut out a few pieces from 10 mm plywood, a support for the side support, and actual side supports around the edges to allow glass to better wrap over. I dry fit the structure on the beam. Before I put glass on the plywood pieces, I will need to adjust the supports so that all is vertical. I draw a pencil along the crossbeam so that I can mark what needs to be cut off, and cut off this with a multi-tool. The surface needs to be coarse for the support to glue well. Having done the dusty work outside, I move inside again and mark where everything should be located. I draw the outline of the mast foot and where the hinge support should be placed. There is a locking pin in the mast that I need to access, thus the small recess in the bottom of the supports. To increase the resistance to wear and tear, I will add a stainless steel plate to each support. I mark where these should be placed and where the supports to the supports should be placed. I use a depth controller on the multi-tool to cut a 3 mm deep recess for the steel plate and chisel off the material. With the rasp tool I level out the rest of the recess. I widen the hole in the stainless steel to 10 mm. This is the same diameter as in the mast pipe hinge. I make a 10 mm thick hole on the plywood to allow for making a hole in the hole. Now I can mix epoxy and thicken it with cotton fibers and glass fiber cuttings for strength. I fill the hole with the mixture. I use the same mixture to fasten the mast foot. The mast will rotate around this pin. Thus it needs to be anchored strongly into the beam. After a couple of hours I overfill the hole. Wood always sucks up some epoxy, thus the refilling. The side supports are covered in 300 gram per square meter glass fiber and wetted out. When the hinge supports are ready, I can glue them in place. I put glue on all bonding sides and place the pieces at the pre-marked places. With some masking tape I plan on holding the pieces in place during curing, but this will turn out to not work so well. I repeat the process with the support to the support. Between the gluings I clean cut the edges. This is important to get a nice edge, but also to be able to lay down the cloth on the joining side. I also re-drill the holes for the swing rod. And notice that I have made a gross error. When I left the pieces to cure last night, I must have moved this piece without noticing it. I can't have a gap here, so I need to redo this. With the multi-tool I cut into the newly formed bond. The joining is still soft, so the cutting produces some unhealthy smoke, thus the mask. I clean up the surface to remove some of the burnt material. I prepare to glass over the edges at the same time as I relocate the misplaced side support. Then I mix a new batch of epoxy and add some cotton fibers to turn it into a viscous glue. Now I can redo the gluing at the correct location. The rod helps me align the two supports, but it also stabilizes support in the right spot. I put glue on the edges and wrap the edge with 160 gram per square meter glass that I wet out. I chose 160 gram here because it's easier to wrap around, and it's enough. Now I will let this cure, and after clear cutting the edges I can do the last step. That is to tab the edges. First I add really thick epoxy along the joinings. This is to refill any gaps and to form a fillet along the joinings that I can glass over. This will make the joinings much stronger and nicer. After curing, clean cutting and the light sanding, this will be ready for painting. This is all for this episode. Next time I will do the back crossbeam. Please join me then.